Good day and welcome to another episode of Drew's Book Reviews. So today we are going to be talking about the second book in the Book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, Deadhouse Gates by Steven Erickson. So if you're interested in my thoughts on this book and what I thought of it, stay tuned because that is coming right up. Okay, so Deadhouse Gates, Book 2 of Malazan, Book of the Fallen. This is part of a epic series by Steven Erickson. It's grand in its scope, it's massive, it takes place on multiple different continents across the world that has been created. It is dark, it is disturbing, it is filled with grimness and, well, grimdark, I guess is the best way to put it. It is an epic fantasy with a very, very dark overtones and dark themes to it, which is part of why I guess I could say that I'm enjoying this. Though I wouldn't put it at like a 5-star review, I'm still enjoying it enough to continue with the series. But the thing with this series, and it's kind of like the first book, the second book as well, Deadhouse Gates, is that there's a lot to follow with a lot of different characters, all taking place in different places around this world that has been created. The basic concept of this is that within this world there are multiple different continents, and we have this Malazan Empire headed up by Empress Lysine. The Malazan Empire is seeking to control the world, and she wants to conquer everything. There's the last holdouts of the 7 cities, which we heard and read about in the first book, Gardens of the Moon. If you haven't checked out my review on that, definitely check it out. I will endeavor to link that below this video. But the 7 cities have been conquered mostly, and now we're in a rebellion situation where those who have been conquered are rebelling against the Empire. And there's a lot going on in all aspects of this world and what's happening and where characters are going and what they're doing to try to survive and try to hold out against the Empress. So that is basically the setting for this book. And I can tell you that Steve Erickson, you're not eased into this. He is, whether it's Gardens of the Moon or Deadhouse Gates, you're not eased into this. You're just thrown right in from the start. You're opening up in this scene of this slave procession amidst this horror and this terror and this just grim, dark setting where everything is just insanely creepy and disturbing. And the feel, it's almost surreal reading what's going on within this book as we're introduced to our characters. So this slave procession that we kind of are dropped right into, we have our characters Felicin, Heboric Light Touch, which is part of this slave procession as well, and they are sold off to essentially the mines of Otatarl. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, Otatarl is basically this substance which inhibits magical use. Blocks the ability for wizards and magic users to access their warren, which is where the source of their power for their magic comes from. So we've got their storyline, but it's not just Felicin and Heboric Light Touch. There's also Bodden, and he's a bit of a thug. Heboric Light Touch is an excommunicated priest. They manage to effectively, they escape from their situation only to wind up in more difficult situations. They have to cross this massive desert, go out to sea. You know, as they're out to sea, this is where they end up getting shipwrecked at sea and barely survive because they happen to come across this other ship. But let me tell you about this other ship. Here's the crazy thing about this ship. It is filled with these headless bodies all down below decks, all rowing under some magical power while their headless bodies are down below rowing and rowing, and all their heads are just up top of deck hanging out. So it's kind of like this creepy, disturbing ghost ship. I mean, weird, right? Meanwhile, we got our other characters, Icarium and Mappo, who are making their way across this holy desert of Raruku. Now they are a Jaghut warrior. and a trail warrior. Usually you don't see these two together, but they're making their way across this holy desert of Raruku, where they seek to take shelter in the temple of Iskarl Pust, who is like this mad, crazy, insane priest. And the reason they're looking to take shelter in the hopes of, you know, this ascendancy to become like gods essentially, but they're also having to fight off all these kind of crazy, insane, demonic like creatures as they cross the desert. So you've got these shapeshifters, you've got the soul taken, and they're trying to cross the desert. In the meantime, we've got the Sheikh, who's like this desert priestess who is seeking to raise the whirlwind and wreak destruction on the world, and just everything is just going nuts. And while we're at it, we've got Coltane and Dukir going on in another part of the continent, in another part of the world, and they're trying to fight to survive essentially as they're dealing with the rebellion. Dukir being a historian of the Empire, Coltane being a military leader in the Empire, and they're trying to fight for their survival, squash the rebellion, and restore order. Essentially, Dukir in the meantime is trying to save the lives of hundreds of refugees who he has to get across this war-torn and ravaged land while keeping them safe and protected, while bringing them through an extremely deadly and hostile territory and zone. So everything is just going crazy with this and each set of characters as they proceed on their journey throughout this story. In the meantime, Fiddler, Kalam, Crocus, and Aspelar, formerly known as Sori from the first book, are basically caught up in this plot to murder the Empress and trying to get Aspelar back home to her father. So we can follow their journey as well, and of course all these characters are constantly up against these different troubles, these different problems, having to fight their battles and just try to survive. This book really is a grim, dark, this whole series really is this grim, dark series. There is so much within this world that is just massive, and I really am enjoying it. Overall, I did give it a 3 out of 5, mainly because I will admit I did feel that I was struggling to follow some parts of the story and trying to keep straight what was going on. And I think maybe that was more my feeling than anything else, because honestly, this is the type of book that I generally enjoy. I would have expected to find myself having my attention held a bit more than it was, to be completely honest. But, you know, that being said, I don't know if it's necessarily the book's fault or just my mind wasn't in a state to really focus these last couple weeks on reading in an effective way. But overall, you know, I didn't struggle terribly to follow it, but I did enjoy it for what it was. It's just, the characters are awesome, and you know, that one scene with Dukir, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the one scene at Dukir at the end of, effectively the end of his journey, and just the grim dark kind of the, you know, disturbing nature of what we saw there, and how all those people were along the road. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to get too much into spoilers if you haven't read it yet. But it was just brutal and graphic the way Dukir ended up in that situation. I'm trying to stay vague here because I don't want to give spoilers. And overall, I'd have to say I really did enjoy this book. Overall, it was good. I enjoyed it. It's 3 out of 5 stars, so I enjoyed it. And I wouldn't say that it's amazing, but still a good read overall, especially if you're into that kind of dark thematic fantasy that we see within these books. And I'm sure I'm going to continue to enjoy the whole Malazan Book of the Fallen series as a whole. I'm going to continue to read them, and I think overall I am going to enjoy it in the long run and find it to be one of the better series. I think it's definitely one of those books where I will need to go back and reread at some point, probably once I'm done reading the series as a whole. I think I might go back and listen to it on Audible, because it's just one of those book series that there's so much within it. There's a lot going on, a lot of different characters, and sometimes it takes a read through more than once to really kind of get a sense of what's going on in the story. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually kind of like that in some ways, because, you know, it's one of those worlds where you could just really get into, and you kind of figure some new stuff out each time you go along. So I'm thinking I probably will reread it at some point. But anyway, those are just some of my thoughts on Deadhouse Gates, Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 2. So, You know, if you like this video or you watched to the end, thank you so much for watching. Definitely do appreciate it. You know, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You could follow me on Twitter and Instagram primarily. I do have a Discord. The link for that will be below as well. If you like what I do and you want to support this channel, you can also join me over on Patreon. I do give early access to my patrons, so you can join for as little as $1 US per month. But hey, you know, if you just want to watch, like, and subscribe, or even just watch, that's fine too. So thank you so much. Do appreciate it. And until next time, keep on reading. Bye.